So, hello everyone, this is the Sports Show podcast, and today we're joined with Sam Patterson. How are you, mate?
I'm very well, thank you. Very well.
Brilliant. Well, let's get started. What got you into fighting?
What got me into fighting? To be fair, I actually grew up watching fighting films. Like my parents, it wasn't growing up watching cartoons and stuff. I grew up watching films like Kickboxer, Bloodsport. That's why I grew up on Steven Seagal. So I've always been around fighting or watching some kind of fighting. And then I just, as a teenager, my little brother went to an MMA gym, come home, told me to go along. And yeah, I went along and never looked back. And here we are now.
Yeah, and you've had a brilliant amateur career as well. Do you think that's sort of led you into becoming a professional then?
Yeah, it was just kind of like the progression, really. I was training because I enjoyed to train. And then I wanted to test my skills. And then you have amateur fights. And then I started getting wins after wins. And I realized I was really good at it. And then it was like just a natural progression, turning professional. And then from professional, just racking up the wins to where we are today. So yeah, it's just a natural progression. I did believe a few amateur fights in that I like how good I am, really good at this, and I could actually make a career out of it. And yeah, here we are.
Yeah, and you've had a brilliant start to your professional career anyway. Just before this Contender series, I think you were 9-1-1, which is pretty good, we'll say. But how did it feel then, just before the Contender series, to be that high up on the record or on your professional record?
Yeah, it was really it's thanks to that one that I lost that's got me on the win streak that I'm on, because I never won that feeling ever again. And 9-1-1 is impressive when you look at the opponents that I've had. There's guys out there that have got these undefeated records or massive records, like double what I've got, 14-0 and stuff, whatever it is. But then you look at the guys they fought, and then it's not so impressive. Whereas you look at the guys that I have fought, and 1-1 with the guys that I fought is impressive, and that's the reason I'm in the UFC. That's the reason that I went through the Contender series confident that I could beat the guy or whoever was in front of me to get that UFC contract, because the 9 opponents I had before tested me and were no easy fights. Every single one of them. Look at their records and compared to mine. Like, look at theirs compared to mine. I've been tested before getting to the UFC. So now I'm in the UFC. I'm ready for all comers.
Yeah, and we're just going to touch on this Contender series then. We're going to go run through it. First of all, how was the whole experience?
Oh, incredible. Like, it was just, I soaked up every single moment. Like, sometimes it's hard going into like fight week when you got the weight cut and stuff, but honestly, I couldn't take the smile off my face. Like, the whole experience, I embraced every single second, because I wanted it to be an experience instead of it being like, oh, I've got the weight cut and then you enjoy the fight.
Yep.
That passes. But the whole experience, if you can embrace the whole experience and love every second, it really is an amazing thing. And I believe I've done that. So the whole fight week in Vegas, being around the UFC and everything like that, becoming a UFC fighter and going to the PI and using their facilities was just a mad experience. And Vegas is some place, I tell you, like it's something I can't even explain. The place is just 24/7. There's no break. It's like a little planet of its own. Like, it's just crazy.
Yeah, and then obviously, see the Contender series. Is that something you have to apply for, or do you get selected for it, or what ways it work?
Yeah, you get selected for it. Like, they're looking for, if you look at the guys on that show, they're the best guys from all around the world, guys and girls. They're the best from all around the world that are not signed to the UFC yet. So you are fighting a killer on that show. And the fact that it's for something, it's not just a fight. You win, you lose. It's not just that. You're fighting to fight in the UFC. You're fighting for that contract. So one, you're fighting a killer, but two, they've got they go that extra mile. They're willing to like really put it all on the line, to get that contract. So you find the killer that wants it more than anything. So it's the best guys from all around the world, and you find the best, and then they sign to the UFC if you're good enough. So yeah, I was fighting another killer that wanted to change his life and make a dream a reality, and that's a tough opponent in itself. So yeah, man, it's you just get selected. It's not just like you apply for it. Your management can obviously put your name across to the UFC or the matchmakers, but really they're looking for the best, and they've probably got their eyes on you already if you're like going for the show.
Yeah, and because of how big of an opportunity this was for you, you must have put in one hell of a training camp.
Yeah, it was that side of things is never. I did actually saying that I did put in more miles and more everything, but I wasn't doing it intentionally. Every fight is the hardest fight to date, so I train my ass off regardless. Like it's not, oh, this is the one, so I have to put in more. I can't put any more in than I already do. You know, like well, I didn't think I could, and I excel every single fight camp. I put in more miles this camp, not trying to. I just ended up doing more. Um, Maybe I was not intentionally putting in the extras. I just didn't realize I was doing it. So, but I do that every camp. I push myself to the limit every single fight camp, regardless, because every single opponent is the hardest opponent, and every single fight getting to this point was for the UFC. That's how every fight I've had in my pro career has been the Dana White's Contender series. Like I'm pushing to get to the UFC, and it was only because this was the last one to actually finally make that dream a reality that I might maybe instinct like not even meaning to put in those extras. You know, like every camp's the hardest camp to date.
Yeah, and then the question that everyone wants to know is, what is Dana White really like?
What's the
What's Dana White really like?
Oh, he's cool, man. Like I only got like a second with him. Like you can imagine, he's a very busy
Yeah,
guy. But do you know what? Seeing how genuinely happy and excited he is around the fights, it just shows how much he truly loves the sport. Like, and that was just natural to him. He weren't putting on a front. He weren't acting any certain way. He's just himself. But he's so happy. Like, and it's because he's watching fights and that he loves the fights and he loves the sport. You can truly see that in him. And yeah, man, he's sound. From the little interaction that I had with him, he's sound, and he's now my boss. So he's obviously a cool guy.
yeah, yeah. And finally, you got the contract secured. Then must have been a dream for yours.
Say again?
You finally secured your UFC contract. It must have been a dream of yours.
Yeah, that was the dream. Like I said it before, I'll make a dream become a reality. And for the last 10 years, I've been working towards this dream. I said to a lot of people, I said to everyone around me, I would be a UFC fighter. And the 27th of September, I made that dream become a reality. So now it's about making, it's the next thing that's going to happen. You know, it's now I've got to find the next goal, the next dream, and push on and just show that you know what I mean? If you've got a dream, work for it, you know, like put the work in and make it a reality. It's possible. When I was saying this like 10 years ago that I'd be a UFC fighter, I could see in people's faces they did not believe me. And I just went out there and proved that no, it is possible. If you have a dream, you can work your ass off and actually achieve it. And here I am now.
Yeah, and of course you've signed for the UFC then. Of course, the fight's only finished really a few days after, or a week nearly. But have you any idea of when you're going to be out next in the UFC? Anything like that?
Yeah, like I would like to get out before the end of the year. The December 17th card, the last fight of the year, back at the Apex where I just fought. I would love to be on that card. If I'm healthy, I want to be active. I love to fight. So it's not about picking the right fights or dates. If I'm healthy, I'd like to fight as long as I've got enough time to prepare and make the weight and everything, because it's all quite a lot. So yeah, I'd like to get out before the end of the year. 3 fights, 3 wins, and yeah, get my UFC debut out of the way back at the place where I got the contract. And then there's also another side of the coin, that's the UFC are coming back to the UK early next year. So depending when that is will
Yeah,
will determine if I fight before the end of the year, because I don't want to fight in December and miss out on the opportunity of fighting for back in the UK, because I haven't fought in the UK for nearly 5 years. So I would love to come back here and fight here. So depending on when that is next year will determine if I fight at the end of this year, you know? So I'm looking at, if I can do both, that's great. But there has to be a kind of gap between them, you know, to let the body repair and go again. So we will see. I'll speak to my management. They'll speak to the UFC, and we will see.
yeah, brilliant. And then finally, let's look ahead a wee bit. after retirement, are you looking to go back into coaching to continue in with the sport?
I haven't thought so much about retiring in that aspect. Like, I like to think I've got 10 years now in the
Oh yeah,
UFC. Like, this is only the second chapter of my career. Um, I've spent 10 years getting to the UFC. I would like to have another 10 years fighting in the UFC. I haven't thought so much about what I'll do after I retire from fighting. What I have thought about is making the right investments over the next 10 years that I don't have to go back to work. I've
yeah,
invested the money I've made correctly that I can retire when I finish fighting. I don't have to do anything I don't want to. Now, whether I go into coaching or I don't, I haven't thought that like what I'm going to do when I retire. I've just thought about when I retire, I'm financially secure and the people around me are financially secure that I can choose what I do when I retire from fighting.
yeah. Sam, thank you very much for coming on. It's a pleasure, and I can't wait to see you out next. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, man. Thank you for your
Thank you.
time too. Thank
Thank you
you.
too. See you later.